Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marco Jure Show. It is Friday, October 10th, 2025. As the week slowly comes to a close, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths always thrive. Please don't forget that like button, follow the show, share with whomever you need to hear the truth. That's very important, obviously. Let's get ready now for the best hour radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go. Let's jump right into the fire with this first article I have for everybody today. And Donald Trump, I'm sorry to say, did not win the Nobel Peace Prize. I know that's a big shock to everybody. You know, it's very sad to hear this. Apparently, according to the New York Post, Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado, who no one has ever heard of, won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Does anybody really care? I don't really care, but apparently that's through the chyrons today, so I thought I'd share that with everyone. So we're staying up on things. She won the Nobel Peace Prize for her decades-long struggle against authoritarianism, fearless defense of democracy, which is mob rule, and both moral leadership in her country racked by crisis. Obviously, the state of Venezuela is not doing well, but she's known as the Venezuelan Iron Lady. Machado has been hiding for more than 14 months after refusing to bow down after Nicolas Maduro declared victory in a U.S. and EU criticized election. Yeah, there we go. So what did she win for? That's what I want to know. What did she actually win the prize for? What peace did she actually bring? Well, the Norwegian Nobel Committee stated that the Nobel Peace Prize of 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace, to a woman who keeps the flame of democracy glowing amid a growing darkness. Seems kind of baseless to me. Now, I understand people standing for peace. Everyone obviously wants that. But what did she actually do? That's the question. What did she actually do to push for peace? She actually won, and she actually congratulated President and championed President Trump, which I thought was pretty interesting. It says here that María Corina Machado has shown the tools of democracy are also the tools of peace. She embodies the hope of a different future, one where the fundamental rights of citizens are protected and their voices are heard. Again, interesting to me. I don't really care too much about this award. It doesn't really mean anything to me. I could care less who wins the award. Ever since Obama won, after setting the world on fire, I think it's a pretty meaningless award, I think you would agree to. So, I mean, President Trump desperately wants it for some reason. I don't know why. Doesn't make any sense to me, but, people like prizes, I guess, and people like the notoriety. So there you go. So congratulations to her. I doubt we'll ever hear anything of her ever again. We'll see who wins it next year, of course. Obviously, some people on the right are a little bit miffed, basically asserting that Trump is started 8 different peace processes, and, he's achieved this greatness in the, Middle East, of course, with the ceasefire now happening between Israel and Gaza, and how dare they? I sit back and I wonder, though. I say to myself, okay, President Trump, clearly, I think President Trump wants peace in many regards. I don't think he likes war. But when you bomb Iran, when they pose absolutely no national security risk to us, I scratch my head and say, why are we doing this? What was the purpose of that? Iran poses no threat to us. Oh, I know you see on the news all the time, they hate the United States. They call us the big Satan, Israel the little Satan. That's all, whatever to me. Do they actually pose any type of threat? Have they attacked us in any way? And the answer to that is no. We attacked them, unprovoked. So that's a big problem, I think, and I'm sure the committee that looks at all this does as well. Then you've got to look at what we've done in the Middle East. Now, we've funded everything that Israel's doing. this entire time. We fund their entire military. So therefore, anything you see happening in Gaza after January 20th of this year, President Trump has allowed all that money, all those resources into the IDF, their military. And that's a result of us. He could have cut that off day one of being in office. He could have said, I want an end to this war, which he said before taking office. He could have said that. He said, I'm not funding this anymore. We'll give you nothing. But he didn't. Instead, he what? Ramped up spending. He gave him $20 billion in March alone. And recently he wanted to give another $6.4 billion to them. We're paying for all that, by the way. All that destruction, all that chaos, all that murder, all the torment. Now, some of you will shout back, well, Gervais, come on. They're obviously defending themselves. This goes beyond self-defense, folks, what we're seeing right now. This is beyond self-defense. The other line is, too, we want the hostages back. Well, hey, just so I can reiterate this to you, Netanyahu could have had the hostages back before they even invaded Gaza. That was one of the stipulations that Hamas gave to him. And Netanyahu said no. So is it really about the 250 hostages they took? Something tells me otherwise. So there you have that. And then, of course, you have the Trump administration bombing several boats in the Atlantic near South America, which, again, we've blown up, I think, 2 Venezuelan boats, 1 Colombian boat. I read that to you yesterday, too, by the way. The president of Colombia is really not happy about all this, saying you basically just killed Colombians. There were no drugs. The other 2 boats, we can't even confirm if there were actual drugs on them. Again, we're talking about peace here. Are you really pushing for peace if you're blowing up boats in the Atlantic Ocean without any type of due process that violates international law? Of course, we want our nation to be safe. We don't want narco-terrorists to be bringing in drugs to our country. But we have the most secure border, really, in history. That's what we've been happy about. I mean, I've been ecstatic about this, that we've had essentially zero border crossings as of late. We have a secure border. So, again, if we're this secure, if we see a boat that was, again, coming in unannounced, the proper thing would be to stop the boat, detain the people on it, search the boat, and if there are drugs, you confiscate them. And you arrest the people on the boat. And you charge them with a crime. You either jail them or send them back to their country of origin to be jailed, or what have you. But you don't just blow up a boat and say, hey, this is a drug boat, I think. That's not the way to go about things, folks. That's just my take on it. You may think it's fine to blow up boats in the ocean. I don't seem to think that's a good thing. I don't like that. Obviously, we would have to hold people accountable when they commit acts of violence against America. This preeminent just blowing things up, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right at all. So there are some things I think are in the back of the heads of the people on this committee, too, that say, some of these things are not really good. And, maybe next year. Maybe next year for Trump. Who knows? Only time will tell. All right, moving on to some of the things happening in the foreign theater right now. This is in the Associated Mess. And it's saying that Israel's cabinet early on Friday approved President Donald Trump's plan for a ceasefire. That's good news, of course. We want this a stop to all this. In the Gaza Strip, and of course, the release of the remaining living hostages held by Hamas, which is a key step towards ending the ruinous 2 years in this war that has destabilized the Middle East. And by the way, I love how we're just talking about how it's destabilizing the Middle East. Yeah, because they're fighting with 7 different nations right now. 7 different nations. And we're funding every single part of it, just so we're all on the same page here. We're funding all this. The war with Iran, the war with, obviously, inside Gaza, that's killed over 100,000 people, most of whom are innocent civilians that have nothing to do with October 7th. The war against the Houthis in Yemen, we're funding all that. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, just goes on and on. And obviously what happened in Qatar, we're funding all that. Now, a brief statement was made from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office saying that the cabinet approved the outline, and I put that in quotes, the outline of a deal to release the hostages without mentioning other aspects of the plan that are more controversial. And what I think they're alluding to here, of course, is the total removal of IDF troops within Gaza. Again, I don't know how this works. And of course, the most controversial part about that whole thing, of course, is the actual acceptance and creation of a Palestinian state. That's what I really want to know. And I told you yesterday, because I went over it on yesterday's show, that the terms are very broad. They're very broad. They don't really go into much detail. What does a Palestinian state mean? Where are these borders? What is that going to entail? Will Israel recognize a Palestinian state? None of that's in there. They'll talk about the de-escalation, of course, of violence. Am I to believe that Hamas is simply going to give up all their weapons and just hand them over after what the hell has happened the last 2 years? Something tells me otherwise. Now, an Israeli official, speaking on conditions of anonymity in line with regulations, said that according to this agreement, the ceasefire should begin immediately after the government approval. The Israeli military now has 24 hours to pull back its forces to an agreed-upon line. Well, I told you yesterday that I think they're going to be retreating, some 70% further away from where they are now, or what have you. Again, nobody knows who's agreeing upon this. We don't know. Now, the broader ceasefire plan includes many unanswered questions. Again, I addressed many of them yesterday to you, such as whether and how Hamas is going to disarm, who will govern Gaza. But the sides appear to, closer than they have been in recent months to ending the war. And again, the killing of tens of thousands of people in Gaza, rather, which has been reduced to nothing but rubble, to be honest with you. Brought famine to many parts of the territory, disease, obviously death. People couldn't even afford the tents at some point, so they're living on the sand. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable when you think about it. And of course, the people that have been killed, obviously inside all this rubble. What is going to be the process for this? For this, redevelopment of Gaza? That's what I want to know. When does this start, by the way? When can we actually go through the rubble and find the more people that have been killed? That's what I want to know. When does this all begin? The war, which began with Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, has also triggered other conflicts in the region, sparked worldwide protests, and led to allegations of genocide that Israel denies. Well, we should be able to get in there now, folks, and kind of see what's happening, right? We should be able to get in there and see what's going on. Is there really genocide? Are there people actually starving right now? Was all this aid that has been allocated by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation denied? Now, of course, if you've been listening to my show, you know all this, but that's the question I'm generally asking right now. We should know this by now. We should know this by now. And of course, the tell in the whole thing is inside the peace plan. It says the UN will now be in charge of bringing in all the benchmarks of the food trucks to some 600 a day, which was agreed upon. That wasn't happening. And again, I could play you clips of their officials touting, hey, we haven't given them anything in 3 months. The hell with them. They're all animals. Gaza's going to become Jewish. All this other stuff. Just they're very brazen about it. They were very brazen about it, this extremist government they have there. And while I'd like to tell you that wasn't happening, that seemed clearly to be the extent of what was going on there. So it says here some 1,200 people were killed by Hamas. We know some were also killed by the IDF through the Hannibal elective. You could look in that if you'd like. 251 hostages were taken. And as I told you before, Netanyahu didn't even have to go inside Gaza. If that was the one thing, was the hostages. He didn't even have to go into Gaza. They said, if you don't invade Gaza, we'll give you back all 251 hostages. And I'm sure there were other provisions with that as well. Probably the release of certain prisoners that they were holding captive, I'm guessing was probably an addendum to all that. Netanyahu refused, and again, he went inside Gaza. And what's been the end result? They've gotten some hostages back, which is fine. That's good. But we know for a fact certain hostages have died. And it resulted in the killing of more innocent people and not Hamas terrorists. That's the problem. And the idea is, well, Hamas is staked out in every one of these buildings. They're hiding behind people. That's just a load of crap, to be honest with you. If you know, let's pause for a second. If you knew that Hamas is going down in these tunnels, when you're telling people, hey, we're going to bomb, such and such region, and then you go ahead and do it, and you find out, hey, we've killed 80, 90, 100, 120 people in this bombing, it begs the question, why Hamas is hiding on every one of these buildings? Go look at Hamas now. They're in tunnels. They're underground. You've killed over 100,000 people. 83% of them are civilians. It's saying here 170,000 wounded. I'm sure it's much higher than that. And again, we don't know who's under all this rubble, too. We don't know any of that. And that has yet to be seen how that gets taken out. So, while I'm happy about this, I'm glad there's a ceasefire. I have to remind you, Netanyahu has never accepted any type of ceasefire. There's supposed to be a ceasefire back in March. Obviously, he hasn't held up to his end of the bargain. They're just shelling and killing people yesterday in Gaza. Now, it does seem today that it's subsided. We've seen people, again, walking to northern Gaza right now. No one's being shot at, so I guess that's a good thing. But only time will tell, folks. If this continues on, if someone says, hey, this side breached it, so we're going to do this, only time will tell. Only time will tell. Now, there is one positive about all this, too. Obviously, the end of the killing. Obviously, the release of hostages on both sides is obviously a positive and a good thing for both the Israelis and, of course, the Palestinians. This is in Barron. It says that a team of 200 U.S. troops are to oversee Gaza truce. So now what they're going to do is have a team of about 200 people deployed to the Middle East to oversee the Gaza ceasefire between Israel and Hamas after this peace deal was brokered by President Trump, is what a senior U.S. official said on Thursday. And the one that's going to be overseeing it is Admiral Brad Cooper. He is the head of the Central Command in the U.S. military. And what they're claiming is we'll have initially 200 people on the ground. Now, that doesn't say if they're going to be on the ground in Gaza or Israel or where they will be. But his role will be to oversee, observe, and to make sure that no violations occur with this 21-point peace plan. Now, Egyptian, Qatari, Turkish, probably Emirati military officials will also be somewhere embedded in this team. So it's not just simply an Israel side and nobody else to oversee the other side. So I'm sure the Arab states that helped sit down with President Trump and come up with this plan are going to also be involved in this. Now, a second official also said that no U.S. troops are intended to go into Gaza. So I'm guessing that they're going to be somewhere on the border. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. But obviously, at some point, they're going to have to go in because they have to go in and start this redevelopment plan, which is going to take a long while. People are saying that Admiral Cooper, obviously being the one that oversees all this, gave a lot of confidence and security to the Arab countries. So they like this guy. They want to work with him. So it seems like the overseeing of this will at least be something positive, at least especially on the Arab side as well. So we'll see how long this lasts, folks. I hope it lasts a long time. I don't know if it'll last a long time. I want it to last a long time. But again, I told you, Netanyahu's never seen a ceasefire that he's ever agreed to. That's the sad part about it. Maybe this time he will. I don't know. He seems, I guess, at least somewhat happy about this. It looks like his government is accepting it. So I do hope that it lasts. But remember, we want a permanent peace plan. And if everything goes through, that means you're going to see the creation of a Palestinian state. Unless, of course, the United States or Israel block this in the UN. But that is in the agreement. So if we're agreeing to all this, and President Trump is going there, again, to oversee this as well, the start of it, we should see both sides sitting down and agreeing to each of these 21 points. And, of course, the eventual creation of a Palestinian state. I don't know if Israel goes along with it. I got to be honest with you. I don't know if they'll go along with that. Seems to me that when Netanyahu went back, he was very adamant that that'll never happen. His UN ambassador, Danny Danon, also echoed the same thing. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if these things happen. But I think they're going to want, obviously, those prisoners back, of whom they want. Obviously, the 1,700 or so. And again, I think they have more than this. I think the 1,700 is a low number of the innocent people held without any type of crime brought back as well. But they're going to want a creation of a Palestinian state. That's what it's going to come down to. And again, if Israel says no, does that mean they've breached the contract? Does that mean they go back to fighting? I don't know. And again, I still don't know what's going to happen between Israel and Iran. Many of the intelligent people I follow have really echoed the stance that this is not over yet. That's still in Israel's purview right now. And by the way, what's going to happen in Syria and Lebanon? Will the fighting there also stop? Because they haven't defeated Hezbollah. They haven't defeated Al-Qaeda in Syria. They haven't even defeated Hamas. And apparently they're just going to give them amnesty to live as they want, should they cease to exist. So there's lots of unanswered questions with this. Let's all pray for peace, though, for both sides. That's, again, we don't want innocent people dying on either side. All right, moving on. This isn't just the news. It seems that the DOJ is now going to be indicting New York Attorney General Letitia James for an alleged bank fraud. Oh, no shock there. Don't they always accuse us of what they do? That's what it comes down to. They accuse President Donald Trump of fraudulently claiming that Mar-a-Lago is worth more than what it was, using false statements, overvaluing property and real estate to get a more favorable loan. Trump gets the loan, he pays back the loan with interest, and they say that he was ripping off the banks whom said they would love to do business with them again. It's hilarious. It really is. But here's what she did. This is the difference. President Trump, everything he did here was absolutely illegal, by the way, just so everyone's clear on that. It's a bunch of nonsense. The Department of Justice now is saying that, like, following the Federal Housing and Finance Agency Director, Bill Pult, making a criminal referral for the Department of Justice alleging that James actually falsified bank documents. Now, based on media reports, Letitia James has multiple instances of falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and more favorable loans and terms to get what she wants, which again is illegal. And again, this is the leading law enforcement officer in the state of New York, just so we're all clear on that. We'll see how this one goes down. Just, when I see these officials, they say they're going to indict them. Do I actually think they're going to go serve time or receive some type of penalty? I have no idea. I really don't. We haven't seen anything yet, too, with Dim Comey. He's supposed to be indicted. He's all excited about it. Letitia James, obviously, is screaming to no end about what's happening with President Trump. It's going to be a civil fraud case, probably. I'm guessing. That's what she tried to put on President Trump. Well, I see the same thing here, is probably what's going to happen here. So I think she'll go down. Maybe she'll get some type of fight. I don't know. Do I think she'll serve any time? Of course not. That never happens with these officials. We hear about it. We're all happy about it. Then we find out, nothing's really going on here. But hey, you know what? P. Diddy got some jail time. I never thought that was going to happen. Maybe something good will happen here when the schmuck Democrats will actually be held accountable. Who knows? Crazier things have happened, right? And by the way, those 4 years really should have been more like 7-8 years in jail. So he got off pretty easy there for what he was doing. All right. Breitbart's got a great article today. And we're going to talk about the economy now. We got to talk about the economy. There's lots of things happening right now that I want to share with everybody before we hit our weekend. It says here that Trump says that he sees no reason to meet with President Xi of China, and he threatens now major tariffs, a major tariff hike, that is, on China. So what's going on, folks? Well, President Trump said on Friday that he saw no reason to meet with Xi Jinping, threatens substantially new tariffs now on Chinese goods, which again are a tax on you and I. If we should we buy anything that is imported from China, which is a lot of things. But responding to Beijing's latest restrictions coming out of Beijing on rare earth minerals seem to escalate this tension between the two world's largest economies. Now, let me stop for a second and tell you. China wants to lead the push in these rare earth minerals. And it's going to be very important for future things like AI, newer technologies, and things of that nature. The U.S. wants in on that. The U.S. wants to lead on this. But China wants to, again, China has this vision that, the 1800s was, and usually prior to that, the world sees that the Great Britain was that superpower. They were the leader of the world. They were kind of this nation that seemed to lead everything, these new innovations and what have you, great military power. And then in the 20th century, it kind of moved into the United States. And the United States kind of took that mantle over and kind of became that superpower. And we've been in that position ever since. But now China wants to really kind of take that mantle from the United States in the 21st century and kind of be that new beacon of light, the leaders, if you will, the greatest military power, the greatest superpower. That's their vision. That's what they see. So they see AI as this really push towards the future. And they're right about that. It is going to be the future. And they want to be leading in all this. They see that. They want to be involved in all the trade, which is, again, something that they're obviously doing a very good job of. And thank you again, Bill Clinton, for bringing them into the World Trade Organization in 2001. That was great, Bill. Congratulations. What a wonderful thing. So now we're seeing tension, though, between the two. That's a big problem. Now, the statement came one day after China announced these sweeping export controls on these rare earth elements and related technologies, of course. The new rules now require foreign entities to obtain licenses to export products containing even trace amounts of Chinese rare earth or manufactured using Chinese processed technology. That's now what the Chinese Minister of Commerce is saying. So now China processes approximately 90% of the world's rare earths. All these minerals that are, again, critical for manufacturing products, ranging from anything in your smartphone to electric vehicles, which, again, they're big on over in China, to fighter jets, to missiles. All of this stuff is very, very important. And that's why I told you, they want to be in charge. They want the greatest military. They want to be in charge of all the technology. And they want to be the world superpower in the 21st century. Make no mistake about it. That is their goal. That's how they see themselves. And they see this as a big push towards that. Now, its share of mining the minerals, however, is significantly lower, around 60% by most estimates. And the United States is obviously trying to close in on that as well. But Trump has now said that he would financially counter China's move. So one of the policies that he's going to be calculating at the moment is this massive increase in tariffs on Chinese products coming into the United States, adding that it'll be a countermeasure that is under consideration. Here's the problem with all this. We need China because we don't manufacture enough here. If we were manufacturing enough here, we wouldn't need China. So unless we get our manufacturing on our way, what are we going to do without Chinese goods? What we have here in the United States, by and large. Obviously, we import from other countries as well, but by and large, we're very dependent on them because we put all of our manufacturing abroad, starting in the mid-90s. That's why you see so many empty buildings right now. That's why you see the manufacturing jobs go away. We need to bring them back. That's one thing I told you. Trump needs to bring back the manufacturing in the United States so that we can become equally competitive with countries like China that are really leading the way in that. Again, lower taxes, less restrictions. That's what Trump should do here. Create an incentive to get these companies to come back to the United States. So what Trump thinks he's doing with this, by putting on more tariffs, it'll make the goods higher. If we're getting that same good from somewhere else, people will not buy it. China loses money. China has to make a deal then. That's the way he views it. That's the way he's viewing all these tariffs, by the way. Now, understand this. China's rare earth restrictions represent the latest kind of in this series of actions by Beijing ahead of kind of this planned presidential meeting. But they've also imposed new port fees on U.S. ships. So they're trying to counteract kind of what we're doing Okay, you're going to put tariffs on us. We'll put on new port fees on any U.S. ship that comes in. They've launched antitrust investigations into U.S. chip making. They've also held back on purchases of American soybeans, for example. That was a big article that just came out. They used to buy 60% of the soybeans that we export. And now American farmers are having to go to other countries, South America, other parts of Asia, to try to sell these in order to keep their profits up. So China's on the move right now, economically. But Trump and Xi were expected to continue these trade negotiations at the South Korea summit later this month. Now, the United States maintains significant leverage, obviously in advanced semiconductor technology and manufacturing equipment. And American companies, by the way, and their allies, control more than 90% of the equipment used in the global semiconductor manufacturing. That's another big thing for a lot of this future manufacturing. Now, China remains heavily dependent on foreign sources for advanced chips. That's what we're trying to do. And again, these are essential for artificial intelligence, military applications of certain technologies, think missile systems, think all that. So they've got to come to the table at some point. But look at this. The confrontation comes, this is how the article concludes here in Breitbart. It says, the confrontation comes after Trump's April tariff announcement triggered a retaliatory spiral that sent the United States tariffs on Chinese goods up to 145%. Remember that? So you're going to pay 145% tax basically on anything you were buying from China. Otherwise, they're going to start losing money. While Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods reached about 125%, causing significant market turmoil. Because now you have an inflation of the consumer pricing. And again, I want to stop and tell everybody, the tariff, any tariff, some people are saying, see, we got them. They're going to have to pay us, 145% before they put our goods to market. Yes, that's true. But the consumer has to make up the difference on those prices. Otherwise, they're going to be losing 145% it costs to obviously put this into the market. So you got to understand, you're paying that difference. Otherwise, that company is going to go out of business or they're going to simply just stop selling here. That's one of the two things that would happen. We've seen that here in America. When it costs more for things like fuel to ship things or to get things here or whatever it is, once you saw the price of gasoline go up in America, what did you see happen follow right after? The rise in prices, the overall inflation. That's what you saw here. And so some businesses for a while were saying, okay, we'll eat up the little extra cost. Eventually, you got to pay the piper. That's the way it always works. You got to pay the piper. Someone's got to make up that difference, and it's got to fall on you, the consumer. So I don't know, again, what Trump was thinking. 145% increase on goods from China is a lot. But in the months that followed, the United States and China held several high-level meetings and agreed to a temporary pause on these tariff escalations. And it seems like we're falling back into old times here. So the talks were aimed at reducing trade tensions and, of course, establishing the groundwork for a new trade deal between the two countries. In June of this year, we saw the United States and China specifically discuss rare earth shipments and establish a mutual framework that both sides said eased these tensions. So why are rare earths so important? I told you before what they're made for, obviously. Anything from even cigarette lighters to smartphones to missile guiding systems, they're very important, by the way. There's about 17 different metallic elements that are found in the Earth's crust. They're very important, though. They have very unique properties. They have magnetic capabilities. They have electrical conductivity. They have even resistance to things like corrosion. They're very important. They're going to be very much a part of our future. And as I told you before, China sees them as, again, leading the future, so they want to lead this fight. That's why they're creating ports in parts of Africa. That's why they're mining in Africa. They're trying to move into South America now. That's why they were working in the Panama Canal, because trade is going to be a very important thing. And that's why President Trump, and rightfully so, we created the Panama Canal, by the way. That's why we wanted to come back in and take control of it. Why should China come in and try to, again, own parts of the Panama Canal, own shipping lanes? charge shipping lanes. So a strategic move, yes, by China, but President Trump is, again, he's very smart in the aspect that he understands where things are very important and where the future lies in this. And again, AI is going to be a very big factor in who leads the rest of the 21st century. So we'll see, again, what happens when they meet. I imagine these tariffs will go down. I can't imagine them staying up or, again, rising yet again. And just so we're all clear on this, too, tariffs are supposed to be administered by the Congress, not the president. The president just simply signs it into law. So that's why I'm very upset about the fact that one day we can decide, hey, we have 145% tariff on Chinese goods, and then the next day we're like, we're going to drop it down to 25% or 15% or whatever we decide that day. It creates an uneasy market structure because you have no idea what these goods are going to cost. So people don't know what to do. They panic. That's why you see things fluctuate so much right now. That's why people are so hesitant to invest, because they don't know what's going to happen. When people know what's going to happen, what they can expect, then they start to invest more, they start to take more risks. But when they don't know what's going to happen, then they're going to be obviously more reluctant, and that's why we see things kind of bogged down right now. All right. Moving on. The Wall Street Journal never lets me down, ever. It says here, America's manufacturing resurgence will be powered by these robots. What robots? AI robots, of course. What other robots would there be? Human robots? Come on. We got enough of those. I believe they're called junkies. They're in the streets right now, hunched over, needle in the arm. Yeah, we got enough of them too. This is interesting to me. I like this article because, again, it kind of plays off of what I just talked about, but it goes a little bit deeper into how it's going to affect the American economy. And what we're seeing now in particularly small factories across America, we're seeing this push towards automations, and of course, these AI supercomputers that kind of are going to be kind of the brunt of the future of what we're seeing for many different things that has to do with this technology. So once a luxury reserved for big manufacturing, smaller, smarter, more flexible, and even less expensive, these cobots is what they're called. They're called collaborative robots. So it's kind of a little play on words there. They're kind of bringing automation to every fabricator, no matter the size. These robots are really more effective in terms of what they can provide for these companies, and it allows them to also become more competitive, is what the article says. But now what we're finding out is the number of U.S. companies that make physical things reached a low point in 2014 under Barry Obama. Wonderful, right? But has since grown up since then. Yet they are trapped in this never-ending labor shortage as skilled workers age out, young people fail to take their places. The problem with that is, though, they don't want to replace these people. They'd rather invest in these AI robots, not have to worry about people clocking in, paying people. They're going to make their money back very, very quickly. That's what we're seeing right now. But now China has become the de facto manufacturer of the world's goods, as I said to you earlier, owing not only to its enormous population of engineers, their technicians, think machinists, things of that nature, but also its 2 million plus army of industrial robots. Now the U.S. is attempting to claw back at some of these contracts, a process called reshoring, and robots can, in some cases, quadruple worker output. So what they're looking at is a small investment, and it's going to be more cost effective for them in the long run, and they're getting more work production, more work output. And just so we're clear on this, the average cobot costs anywhere, on average, between $25,000 and $60,000. Some as low as $3,000, some maybe even exceed $90,000, but the range is somewhere between $25,000 and $60,000. Now let's think about this for a second. You're running a manufacturing company. You have maybe a union behind your workers, and they're expressing that you need to pay them more or what have you. What they're looking at now is, hey, I can spend, say, $30,000 on this cobot. You can put out 4 times the output that an average worker could in an 8-hour day. I can have it run for 12 hours and I can produce even more. I don't have to worry about it calling in sick, getting tired, complaining. It's a good investment. So you'd rather spend, $30,000 on this cobot versus paying somebody a decent wage, like, say, $90,000 or $80,000 or whatever you'd make in a factory, which tend to be our better paying jobs in this country. So the danger comes that companies will over-automate, right? That's a problem. We start seeing a lack of employment in these companies. So we have to consider that as well when we think about our future. But for now, the push to bring back manufacturing in the United States, the demand for industrial goods to power AI's fueled economy are driven by automation, adaptation, and of course, innovation as well. So here we go. They give some examples here. And of course, they're kind of talking about the same thing I said before. I'll give you one example, just so we're kind of all clear on this. The gentleman's company's name is Raymath. He took over in 2019. He said the maker is of food-grade machines, earth mover parts, data center server cabinets, and more for nearly 4 decades, they had no automation in there. 2 years later, in 2021, they began adding cobots, kind of lighter, less expensive ones, easier to program, industrial robots, and it's safe to use around people. So you can kind of intermingle them. So I think he said it started off with 13. Pre-worker productivity at the facility has soared, with individual producing as much as 4 times as many the pace per day than they could have before. So you're seeing a greater output when you invest in these things. So now this makes Raymath more competitive. It has also helped company triple its revenue. That's a big thing, especially in times of inflation, obviously. But now it's also been able to slightly expand the company's workforce from about 130 to 145 workers. Humans have gone from doing all the grinding, the welding, the machine operating, and parts, moving over to overseeing and collaborating with the robots who take the bulk of these other types of tasks that I just mentioned to you. So these robots have become radically easier to program over the past couple decades. And now people can use simple tablet interface to instruct them to perform specific sequences of action. So it's kind of like, when I think about this, it's almost like the assembly line, right? That Henry Ford created, the assembly line of creating automobiles. Right? You have certain people at certain parts, but you have the assembly line, the kind of the automation doing some of this work. Now, obviously, it's a conveyor belt or what have you, or anything like that. But this is the same kind of thing when you really think about it, except now it's performing a certain task when it gets to that portion of the line. And it's doing some of the things that they deem as kind of more, unfavorable work, I suppose. Even though I'm sure I know many welders who would love to do all this, but what they're finding is it's able to allow them to increase worker output. So now dozens of companies now in the United States now offer manufacturers the kind of specialized welding cobots that Raymath uses. And of course, they're saying these metalworking cobots is part of a broader trend in robotics. They specialize robotics that use things like sensors to navigate through human environments, so they make it more safe, obviously. And they can cope with more of a variability than previous industrial robots. So they're really kind of advancing to a much higher level. So will the future be a move away from these humanoid robots to kind of these cobots that can collaborate with humans? It seems to be the way things are going. We're even seeing them in such situations. For example, there's a picture here of Elon Musk has like this compensation package with the promise that Tesla will produce 1 million Optimus robots. And what these Optimus kind of humanoid robots do, they can do things like serve you popcorn at a drive-in or something along those lines. But again, we have to understand too, you're also taking away some of these lower skilled jobs. Now, some people say, well, who cares? Who wants that? Who wants a job where you're passing out popcorn to somebody? But I beg to differ here, because you need some of these jobs so people can start off in the workforce. Now, obviously, nobody wants a job where you're handing out refreshments your entire life, but it's a start before you get a job of a higher skill level. That's the way things have always worked. That's why you see a lot of kids usually, or at least you used to see that, working a lot of these jobs. So we look at this, we see the way manufacturing is moving in this country, or if it moves, if Trump can really start to bring it back to the United States. But although many U.S. manufacturers really can't match what China does in terms of per volume, they are also competing with automation to tackle smaller batches of goods under tight deadlines. So that's exactly kind of what we're seeing now. We're not really where China is now in terms of this total output, but we're also doing some more positive things as a result of having some of this AI in our companies. So while this is a really cool thing to hear, I do see that it's phasing certain types of jobs out, which I don't particularly like. I mean, does someone who welds for a living really want something like this, where an AI robot can come in and work in a manufacturing facility and phase their job out? I mean, I don't think they like that. And again, that's a very skilled job. So get ready for, I guess, universal basic income. I don't know what to say about some of these jobs. What they're gonna try to do, they're not gonna phase out all workers. There's gonna have to be people in these factories working still. But what they're gonna try to do is phase out certain jobs in these factories of a certain skill set. Like I told you, the grinding, the welding, probably moving certain things. Think of like a forklift driver. I don't know, something along those lines. And they're going to give it to these cobots. And they're going to probably try to make more money with it, obviously, and of course, move in terms of that way. So that's a big drag to, obviously, these companies that come in, because they're going to start using cobots versus hiring more people. Now, you saw in the example here, the company went from about 130 employees to 145. That's one example, but the way you hear people talk about this, and they're saying, get ready for AI to take a lot of these jobs that are undesirable, so that's going to keep people out of the workforce. If you have an AI robot handing you popcorn instead of a human being, that's taking people out of the workforce. So what opportunities do they have? What lower skill opportunities do some people have? That's what you have to think about as we move on in the future. We'll have to figure out ways to tackle that. But it brings me back to COVID, where it was, hey, sit at your home, get your, universal basic income, your $1,400 every 2 weeks. Sit down, don't ask questions, just accept it. And to me, that was a beta test, the whole COVID thing. It really was. You stay at home, don't do any work. We'll give you a certain amount of money. You'll be able to buy food with it, pay your rent, and that's it. Is that where we're moving towards with some of these jobs? We've already heard Mark Zuckerberg talk about this, universal basic income, championing that. Well, these big tech companies are talking about the AI and, of course, the robots and what they're using. Again, I'm looking at a picture right now. It says here, Tesla diner drive-in restaurant in Hollywood neighborhood with a Tesla Optimus humanoid robot serving popcorn. So no person, just a robot doing the work now that somebody else, a young kid, young adult used to do, maybe when they were in college or when they weren't in high school. They'd work in the evening or what have you. That's all getting phased out now. So you don't have that work experience. You don't have that ability to show up, to interact with people, to perform a simple task while you're working towards something else. To me, that's a big problem. Kids need that structure. They need that work experience when they start off. So, again, things are changing. They're changing fast. Will AI wipe out certain jobs? And it seems like, yes, it will be. Yes, it will be. All right, moving on. Wall Street Journal had some good articles, so I'm going to go over this other one right now. Again, just to illustrate where we are as a economy again. But it says here the Landmark U.S. office buildings that are on life support. It just came out the other day. Providence, Rhode Island. Yeah, our first example. Yep. Here we go. The beloved 26-story office tower that defines this capital city skyline has been empty since Bank of America pulled out in 2013. Its owner then proposed converting it into apartments, but local and officials balked, insisting it remained a commercial hub. It swiftly became a symbol of the downtown blight that would occur. Yep. So what we're talking about here, we're talking about a building bust. I talked to you about this long before. I said there's about 20%, roughly 20% of these big buildings in our major cities and elsewhere for that matter, 20% that are vacant right now. They're not being used. And it made me think back to COVID. Sit at home, work from home on your computer, Skype, Zoom, whatever the hell it was. Don't go to work. Don't worry about going to work. Sit at home, collect your universal basic income, or if you were still working, you collect your paycheck from home, and don't worry about going into work. So we don't need this big building. You're just going to work from home now. Which, I mean, I would not like that at all. I mean, I think most people enjoy going to work. I mean, I know I do. I mean, everyone's different, of course, but, there we go. But we got a problem with this. Because, again, since COVID, we've got some 20% of these buildings in America are empty. We saw the downsizing or the closings, in a lot of cases, due to bankruptcy. And, again, never forget, too, we got the restaurants, the small businesses that were wiped out thanks to COVID. Now we have for lease signs on them, for sale signs on them. And we had two big reasons for this, especially in California where I was at the time. You were told certain businesses were obviously essential, right? We had the big corporations that stayed open. You had your liquor stores, your strip clubs, but your churches, your small businesses were closed. So whatever, in my case, Gavin Newsom deemed to be essential stayed open. They thrived, and obviously the others did not, unfortunately. So during COVID, we had, jagoffs like Gavin Newsom that closed restaurants, just like the LA County Board of Stupid Liars, right? Yeah, the stupid visors. Follow the science, remember? And by the way, one dunce, this Sheila Cool, who was sitting on the board at the time, voted with the other four to close down the restaurants one day. That evening, she's seen at a restaurant, and she's asked, "What are you doing here? I thought you said, COVID, it's not safe to eat at a restaurant." And her defense was, "Oh, it's my favorite restaurant. I wanted to go before they closed." I hope she got the runs that night, too, by the way. I can't believe this. You can't despise these people enough. So you're saying it's unsafe to eat at a restaurant. We're going to close all the restaurants down in LA County because of COVID, because it's so scary with a 99.9997% survival rate. But then you're going to go to a restaurant and eat before the deadline for them to close, which would be the next day, when your mandate took place. It's unbelievable. It really is. You can't hate these people enough. So what happened? And of course, these other moronic things, paying them to build tents outside of the restaurants. That was hilarious. You drive by, you see a tent outside, just like a restaurant, tables inside, everything's enclosed, but you're walking into a tent. That was the geniusness of LA County. I know it happened elsewhere too. Because you were too afraid to eat inside. It was too scary, right? Oh, yeah, of course. Now, I'm sure COVID didn't exist inside the tents. It was only inside the restaurant. What a crock of BS. By the way, they stopped that too for a while, except for the Hollywood caterers, right? Even after they capitulated and said, okay, we'll build outside dining, I guess it was what it was called. They shut them down too. They said, look, we can't do this. People spent, I remember this one woman, it was on one of the local Fox stations. She spent like $100,000 to move her restaurant basically inside this tent. And then they told her, hey, you got to shut down because of COVID. But the Hollywood people doing the movies did the exact same thing right next to a restaurant. She's like, what's going on here? It was for the anointed. We're not going to shut down Hollywood. I mean, how could we? But we'll shut down your restaurant. That's fine. Yeah, only Hollywood could, sit on top of each other on a set or at lunch tables, but not your average American citizen. And of course, this helped ruin the entire thing. So, when I think about this, and of course, my example here started before that, but what you're seeing is, of course, the downsizing and the intentional ruining of small businesses in America. So yeah, this this building in province is just one of those examples. But many city skylines, that took shape in the early to mid 20th century have all these types of examples. You have the Chrysler Building in New York. You have the Times Square in Los Angeles. You have the Renaissance Center in Detroit. LaSalle Street corridor in Chicago. All these are examples. These once, beautiful buildings now sit empty. And this is what I told you before. You're going to have a housing bust very soon. The bubble is going to burst, folks. And when that happens, it's not going to be very, very good. Yeah. So I wanted to share this one with you. Obviously, some of the local officials are trying to come up with ways to obviously use these buildings. But at some point, something is going to bust. And it's not going to be good for the economy, folks. It's not going to be good at all. Look at this. Look at this. Once a building's vacancy hits a certain point, its deterioration tends to accelerate, and its retail outlets often shut down. 10 years ago, about 15% of U.S. office buildings had a vacancy rate over 25%. Today, it's more than 20%. As I just told you. Buildings 25% or more vacant today account for nearly 80% of the vacant U.S. office space, up from about 65% 1 decade ago. And what happens when they can't pay those bills? What happens? What happens when they don't pull in that money? You're going to see a big crashing effect, folks. That's what I really want to share with you on this one. But many cities are now exploring converting office space to needing housing. Oh yeah. We need all that housing. Some developers have been able to pull off conversions, especially like in cities like New York, where rents are high enough to justify the risk development. Yeah. Yep, maybe that'll be Zoran Mamdani's next move. He'll take what was that building we just talked about in New York? The Chrysler Building. There we go. The big orange. Yeah, I'll use that. He'll use that to freeze his rents. Everyone that can't pay their rent goes in this building right now. There we go. We'll shove everybody in there, citizen and illegal alike, and, maybe they'll do it in the Roosevelt Hotel, too. Remember they did that during COVID? They just shoved illegal aliens in there? You had people sprawled out on the streets outside of it waiting to get in. Disgusting. Disgraceful. All right, one last quick article, folks. This kind of reflects, too, by the way, kind of what I'm talking about here. When we're talking about land and development, of course, and the need, of course, to build more. Oh, we always need to build more, don't we? This is Moneywise. Says owner of a 175-year-old farm left in shock as New Jersey town tries to seize the land for affordable housing. Yeah. Now the USDA chief is involved in this. This is absurd to me. Imagine living on a farm for your whole family's lived on this for 175 years, and then you're told all of a sudden by some jerks on the city council that they're trying to take your house through eminent domain. This is in Cranberry, New Jersey, and the guy's name is Andy, and his brother's name is Chris Henry, and their maternal great-grandfather purchased the lot in 1850. It says here, but after 175 years of family ownership, their legacy is now under threat as the local government tries to seize the property for an affordable housing project. Now, first of all, why would you build affordable housing in a rural area? To me, that's just stupid, first of all. That's absolutely dumb. That's moronic, is what that is. We got a letter on April 24th informing us of this unfortunate decision that the Cranberry officials wanted to take the entire 21 acres. So what they're doing here is they're using eminent domain, trying to come in and take land of people that have been there for almost 200 years and say, hey, thanks for being here. We're kicking you out. We don't want you here anymore. Have you ever heard of anything so disgusting in your entire life? Now they're saying we actually just want to take half of your land. We'll leave you your house. That's good enough. Basically, they're leaving them a non-viable farm for at least 40 cows and many sheep, is what he goes on to say. Yep, trying to use eminent domain to make way for a developer to build a state-mandated affordable housing. That means lower-income housing, by the way. Yep, so even though you own your land, you really don't own your land, folks. You don't have your private property. They'll take it for public use so they can make a buck on it. And they'll throw you right out. They don't give a damn. What the hell do they care? With compensation, but without the owner's consent. There you go. You want to stay on your land that you own, that you pay property taxes on, that you've worked on your entire life, and they tell you to get lost. That's how much they care about. That's how much your government cares about you. Absolutely makes me sick to my stomach. They're looking to fight this, though. It looks like Brooke Rollins of the Department of Agriculture said that she will support the family in their legal battle. So there you go. Something a little bit positive today. Something a little positive for you start your weekend. That there's maybe some hope for this family. My God. Have you ever heard anything so ridiculous in your whole life? Makes you sick to your stomach, doesn't it? And by the way, I looked up too. I was curious. I said, let me look this up. Let me look up this little fact here. 500,000 illegal aliens reside in the great state of New Jersey. New Jersey. Yeah. Why don't you kick some of them out since you're having trouble with affordable housing, you jerks? It's unbelievable to me. Folks, have a blessed weekend. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Share with some friends, and I'll see you Monday on the next Marco Dre Show. Be good. Stay great. God bless.